Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. During this period of time, the incident related to Japan's nuclear-contaminated water was highly discussed. Fumio Kishida didn't take it seriously at first, and even bit back at China, but as the incident gradually fermented, he obviously regretted it. China's countermeasures have caused great damage to the Japanese fishery industry. What's more deadly is that the Japanese semiconductor giant, Nikon, has also suffered backlash because of the previous export ban. Recently, Nikon Japan announced the company's financial data for the second quarter. The economic loss reached 3.5 billion yen, and the net profit plummeted by 78.3%. In this regard, some foreign media said, "Retribution has finally come." This is the inevitable result of Nikon's malicious targeting of the Chinese market, and no one can blame it. So, where does Nikon's retribution start? Keeping up with the Western group, backlash is not far away. Seeing that Chinese companies such as Huawei and ZTE have become more and more outstanding in the 5G field, the United States on the other side of the ocean is not happy. They quickly waved the big stick of sanctions, and many Chinese companies suddenly appeared in a chip emergency situation, similar to national companies like Huawei. Their 5G business was once suspended. In order to fully cope with the development of China's high-tech, the United States has also used legislation and alliance to encircle and suppress China's semiconductor development. Over the past few years, the United States has introduced round after round of sanctions against Chinese companies, and the Chip and Science Act and tripartite agreements have also been introduced one after another. The development of China's semiconductor industry has indeed been greatly frustrated by this. In the ranks of containing China's semiconductor development, apart from the United States, Japan is undoubtedly the most active member. When the United States sells an export ban to chip countries, except for Japan's decisive support, the rest of the countries are hesitant. It seems that in the eyes of the Japanese, the interests of the United States represent their interests. However, it turns out that this view is extremely naive. In the days to come, the United States will continue to support their Japan with America first. When domestic companies such as Nikon and Kishida entered the U.S. export ban one after another, the U.S. strategy succeeded. It is true to restrict the development of China's semiconductors, but this does not mean that the United States will take into account the interests of its followers. Under the premise of America first, not only are Japanese companies such as Nikon and Kishida unable to benefit, but they are being betrayed by the United States one by one. Stung. As the blood-sucking nature of the United States gradually emerges, the backlash after Japan's Nikon joins the export ban is destined not to be too far away. More importantly, the Chinese market will get rid of its dependence on Nikon to the greatest extent. By then, Nikon, which has lost the world's largest market, destined to usher in a storm. Cooperating frequently with the United States, the retribution finally came. The United States' strategy to contain China over the years is obviously an act to disrupt the global supply chain, and has caused great harm to the interests of many countries, such as the Netherlands, Germany, and South Korea. When these countries face the United States semiconductor export ban, they often hesitating out of national interest. But Japan is different. When they heard that the target of US sanctions was China, they seemed to be on fire and wanted to follow it even if they sacrificed their national interests. After the export ban was implemented, they cooperated with the US sanctions many times, including more than 20 materials and products such as silicon wafers, wet electronic chemicals, masks, photoresists, CMP polishing materials, photolithography machines and targets. The equipment has been included in the export ban. However, what Japan did not expect was that before they could wait for the day when China completely gave up on the semiconductor field, their own companies could no longer hold on. In the past, Japan's Keixia was stabbed in the back by Western Digital of the United States, and later Japan's Nikon was brutally attacked by the Netherlands. ASML stole the company, and the market share of these two Japanese companies in China has been eroded by competitors, especially the latter's Nikon, whose recent revenue has been terrible. According to the person in charge of Nikon, the company's revenue in the second quarter of this year was very unsatisfactory. After withdrawing from the huge market of China, their net profit fell off a cliff, and the decline reached an astonishing 78.3%. Affected by the export ban, the current direct economic loss to Nikon has reached 3.5 billion yen. In order to cooperate with the United States' actions to contain China, Japanese officials ignored the laws of economic development and completely ignored the warnings of the Japanese business community. Now, the huge losses suffered by Nikon are the biggest retribution. After this, it will be even more difficult for Nikon to return to the Chinese market. Earlier, ASML of the Netherlands also responded to the US export ban, hoping to use this to thwart China's ambitions in the semiconductor field. However, it did not immediately put it into action and only made a verbal commitment. When the backstabbing fangs of the United States gradually emerged from Samsung and TSMC, the Dutch ASML suddenly realized the United States only wants to be the only winner and will not take into account the interests of its allies at all. For this reason, the Dutch ASML was busy strengthening exchanges and cooperation with China, including the President's visit, extending the ban, and increasing DUV exports, are all about safeguarding national interests to the greatest extent. In the process, Nikon's market share in China has been quietly filled by ASML. This time, Japan has become the vanguard of the United States' efforts to contain China, and Nikon is destined to become a victim. At a time when China's semiconductor industry is in crisis, Japan has resorted to adding insult to injury, which will undoubtedly affect their business credit, and Nikon's recognition in the Chinese market will also drop significantly. The recent sharp drop in revenue in the second quarter is enough to show that Nikon's retribution, after joining the ban on China, has finally arrived.